welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're gonna deal with the Mustang. I have some stuffs that I'm gonna fix, and I ordered some parts that I have here. And today I'm specifically gonna focus on swapping out the EGR valve, and after that we have the solenoid for the EGR vacuum system, and then we have the idle air control valve. They all comes with gaskets as well, and late after the final one that we have to swap is the, what is this called? It's also a sensor. It's a DPP sensor, something like that. Oh, it's actually says it's here. What I'm swapping out is the EGR pressure feedback sensor. It's DPFE sensor. I'm changing out the EGR valve and idle air control valve. And the reason why I'm swapping out all these parts is because I had some error messages popping up. My engine is running lean. The O2 sensor is throwing those codes. And I had some code for the mass airflow sensor, which I swapped out, and I tried to put back the old one, and the code still, it got worse. And then I had some idle air control codes. I have some EGR valve codes, so I'm swapping out those parts because they are throwing codes. All of those codes could also be related to vacuum leaks, though I really don't find any vacuum leaks, so that's why I'm swapping out the parts. And I will hope for the best after that. Swapping out all these parts is quite simple, and very conveniently they are all located on the top of the intake manifold, and you could really do this in quite a short of time, and it's just a matter of like disconnecting wires and removing a sensor and putting it back. There's no fiddle with it, so it's really easy. Conveniently, we have the idle air control valve here. Here we have the solenoid, and we have the EGR valve, and here we have the pressure feedback sensor. So quite simple to remove and replace. So what I'm going to start with is to disconnect all the electrical connections. Like that. Now I have a little bit more space. And from here on, I'm going to go over them one by one. Probably going to start by removing the idle air control valve, and then I'm going to take swapping out the solenoid because I will get a little bit more space when doing that. From that, I go to the EGR valve and I finish off with the pressure feedback. First out is the removal of the idle air control valve, and that one is connected with two 8mm bolts. And they just goes off like this. It's really simple. I would advise you to save all the old sensors because sometimes you're getting problems with new parts, especially if they are not OEM. Over here you also have an old gasket that you need to remove, and while you're doing that you should plug the holes here. My gasket came off quite easily, so all I need to do is basically to clean out the surface here a little bit, and then I could put a new one on. I'm gonna plug these holes anyway just to make sure that nothing goes down in them, so I just put in some paper there, and that will be enough. Keep in mind, if you're having problems with the idle air control valve, it is actually possible to clean it out. You could just use some throttle body cleaner and clean it out and spray it real clean. And I tried that, it didn't help. Another method of finding out any issues with it is to actually take a multimeter and take the measurements on the voltage. I didn't do that, I'm just swapping out parts. But now, when I have the idle air control valve out of the picture, I could remove the solenoid. It goes off with a 7mm. One of the bolts is located here and the other one is on the other side. And they are both really easy to access. And from here you need to remove the vacuum hoses. Do this carefully so you don't break them or anything like that, because then you have other issues. So off it goes. Before you're installing the new part, make sure that you compare them both. Make sure they are the same. And in this case, they are just the same. So installation is opposite of removal. Just put on the vacuums. Make sure they are snug. Put the screw back on. There's not really a torque spec for this because it's not that. Just make sure it's snug and that it doesn't come off, and you will be fine. There's no gaskets or anything like that needs to hold this in spots, so it should be fine. Reconnect the connector. And now I'm going to remove the paper for the idle air control valve. And I'm going to install the new idle air control valve. Here's the new one, and it comes with a new gasket. So make sure that, compare it with the old one and make sure that they fit. And from here you just tighten it down. Start by taking the bolts together like this, and then I put the gasket on. And I use the bolts as guides to get it on. And then I just tighten it down. I start by tightening one side a little bit, then I move over to the other one and tighten that. So they get like equally tight on both sides. And there we go. Connect the connector and you're good to go with the idle air control valve. Next thing to do is the EGR valve. So let's disconnect the vacuum hose in the top. Always do this carefully so you don't break anything. And removing this is also quite straightforward. First you have a bracket that goes around here, and there's one spot here and one spot there where it has to be removed. Start by removing the bolt that holds the bracket here, and the other one is over there. And just remove the bracket aside, and from now you could access the pipe that goes to the EGR valve here, and you could access both of the bolts, which are 10mm. In order to remove the EGR valve, you should start by breaking this piping loose, and you need like a tool like this. And this goes around here. And then you just break it loose to the left, like that. And from here, you have one bolt here, and you have one on the opposite side that you need to undo. And off it is. There should be a gasket here, but there's no gasket here, so that's probably one reason for issues. So once the new one goes on, there's going to be a gasket, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work much better, so that's a good sign. Well, it's not really a good sign that there's not a gasket, but it's good in the sense that it may actually solve some of my problems. So I'm putting the bolts on like this to have some guidance for the screws and the gasket once more. Over here there's a flange that has to go in on your EGR valve. Be careful when you're doing this so you don't twist that too much. Should be fine to twist and move a little bit, but don't overdo it. From here we should be able to just hand tighten the bolts. And once you're done, reconnect the vacuum, and don't forget to do this hose. And I think, let's see if I should have done this when it was a little bit loose. However, when you're doing this, definitely start it by hand. That's it. So because you definitely don't want to cross thread this one. So now it's on. And I could tighten it up. I'm gonna put it on there pretty snug. But there's absolutely no reason to like overdo it. We are down to the last sensor, and it's the pressure feedback sensor. And this is quite simple too. There's an arrow saying up, which means that that arrow should be pointing downwards because it says up. Now, of course not. It should be pointing up. And basically the only thing you have to do with this is to remove the bolts on each side, the vacuum hoses, and just put the new one in and take the old one out. When you're doing the pressure feedback sensor, you should be careful with the vacuum hoses and use something flat to get them off so you don't destroying them. And also make sure that you remember which one goes where. I just put them like that, so I know that one goes to the right and that one goes to the left. And I think this one is on here with either an 8. Yes, it's an 8. And there's another one on the other side. And off it goes. It should not be way too hard to mix them up because one of them are thicker and the other one is thinner, and the thicker hose goes on the thicker one, so it shouldn't be that hard. And I think it's a good idea to connect the hoses when it's loose. Like that. Now they're really snug on there, and put it back in the bracket like that. Put the bolts back on, and also make sure that the hoses are not like on there in a weird way or anything like that. The other bolt goes on the other side. Tighten it down. And finish this up by connecting the electrical connector. Or maybe not yet. Before you putting the connector on, you should put the bracket, the heat shield bracket on, like that, and let the connector go on the outside. Tighten down the bracket. We are done. We changed the pressure feedback sensor, the EGR valve, the solenoid, and the idle air control valve. Hopefully this will improve the performance and the reliability and how well and smooth my engine is running, because I started to get some issues with the engine cutting off while idling, and then I had a code from the EGR valves. I had some issues anyway, and hopefully it will make a difference. So what we're gonna do now is that I'm gonna pack off all the stuffs here. And what I learned before is that all the parts you take off, make sure you put them back in the boxes where the newer part come with, and save them. Because if you're having an issue with some of the new parts, you could put back the old one. And I'm gonna turn off my check engine light now, and then I'm gonna go for a drive. And I also first I'm gonna like starting up and see how it idles, because previously it idled really rough. So far, so good. It idles smooth compared to what it was before, and previously it would already probably died if it would be the case. I'm gonna read the codes to see if I have any ones, and it's probably too early for you to like give me the codes anyway. So, but I'm gonna take it for a drive, and I'm also gonna take off my dashboard where I feed the live data. So far, I think it was a successful swap. So far, it seems like it's successful. It idles really even compared to before, and it doesn't shut itself off. So far, so good. Now we're gonna go for a ride and see if any sort of engine lights or codes will pop up when I'm driving it. Let's hold our thumbs that it would not. We are in the Mustang now and just started to drive it. And my plan is to drive it around for a little bit and to see if there's any codes or stuff like that popping up. And then I'm gonna also see when I'm driving it around if there's an engine light comes on or not. When the engine gets warm, I'm also gonna do some like acceleration test and see how the car feels. And the only frame of reference I have there is like myself, basically how it felt before and like that. I also connected my my computer, the engine computer, with the OBD2, and I have a live data stream that is feeding me some information that I'm just gonna like look at. I didn't wrote down previously what numbers I had, but I kind of had them in my head, and I kind of know where the needle is on the dash. So what I could see already is that the EGR valve is actually responding very differently on the dash. It kind of like opens and it closes, and it acts as it's supposed to do. I think that my previous EGR valve had some sort of leak. Well, first of all, there was no gasket on it. That is probably causing some issues. And then I was not even sure if it's opened or closed correctly. So there was obviously something wrong with that. And that, if I'm not mistaken, if there's not a gasket, that creates a vacuum leak, or it creates a leak. If you know that, let me know in the comments if that's correct or not. So, but that leak might have been the cause for my other problems and the other codes and stuff like I had. And I'm also a little bit curious how my engine temperature will be affected from having a fully functional EGR valve, because the EGR valve and the gas recirculation system, it kind of helps to provide a correct engine temperature. The engine is kind of up in temperature now. Let's give it the first acceleration. Well, it still is pretty quick. Can't really say that I got any improvement or stuff like that. I'm gonna try it out one more time. This is also an interesting stuff. When I come to an end, previously my engine kind of died in those situations if I didn't push the gas. I was pretty sure that was because I'm missing the vehicle speed sensor, but maybe it was because of the stuff that I've swapped out now. So now let's push the gas. I don't know. Maybe it got faster, maybe it runs smoother. I'm honestly not sure. But we're having another right turn ahead here. What I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna slow down, and nothing happened. It didn't die or anything. So the symptoms I had then, to specify them, was that it died on idle. That's starting to happen just recently. When it's been idle for a while, it's starting to stall and it was uneven in the idle. And when I came to a stop sign and stuff like that, and I slow down without giving gas, just a touch of gas, it sometimes the engine shut down. So it seems like those issues are fixed. But I also had some codes popping up that it was like running lean. I had some mass airflow sensor related code, and I have a quite new mass airflow sensor, so kind of don't think that's an issue. I had some codes with related to the EGR, and I had code related to the idle air control valve. So it's going to be interesting to see if those codes pops up again, or if I solved a lot of problems now. We've been driving it around a little bit, and it seems like some of my issues are actually gone, so I'm satisfied with the output of swapping out these parts. And the best of all is that it's not really hard to swap these parts out. So what's up now is that I'm going to drive it around, see if it actually made any difference and if those codes going to pop up. Hopefully they will not, and this is where I'm going to sum up this video. So if you want to see more Mustang related content, you should click up here to see that playlist, and click down here to subscribe. And remember, I release a new video once a week, so if you don't want to miss them out, subscribe, and also click that bell so you get the notifications when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, and I see you later.